Thank you so much all for your patience. Now, I'd like to hand over the session to Dr. Venkatesh Kartikeyan for next proceedings. So, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, very good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Venkatesh Karthikeyan, Community and Family Medicine Postgraduate Resident from AIMS Patna. As we know, this pandemic has put all of us into difficult times, irrespective of who we are. Sudden deaths in our known circle would have helped us realize the significance of being prepared to handle difficult times. COVID pandemic has not posed a threat to the physical health alone, but also to our mental health as well as financial health. Being doctors, we are too much oriented towards our academics and clinical practice, and we seldom spend time towards understanding the concept of financial management. Since we fail to understand it, we fail to manage our finances efficiently. One of the key components of financial management is health insurance. Many of us don't have a clear picture of financial planning and health insurance, and in order to bring in a greater clarity about this, IMA Junior Doctors Network has organized this national webinar. Now, I take immense pleasure in welcoming our honorable speaker, Dr. Prakash sir. Sir holds MBBS, MS, FAIS, and FRCS degrees. He is the passionate surgeon and currently the managing director of a dominant health insurance company in India, the Star Health Insurance. He is the first of its kind to have 2 decades of clinical experience from India and overseas, and close to 15 years of experience in insurance industry. During the past 14 years of his tenure, he grew from medical director, executive director, chief operating officer to joint MD and now elevated as managing director. His efficiency in contributing to the functional growth of Star Health Insurance is reflected from the growth of the company from $3 million in 2007 to 1.29 billion dollars in financial year 2021. Sir is also the chairperson of CII Tamil Nadu Healthcare Panel for consecutive 3 years. Under his leadership, the company has received many awards, the noteworthy one being the World Health Day Award of Excellence from the Honorable President of India, Sri Pranab Mukherjee. And I personally know how busy Sir's schedule is. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation despite all your commitments. We take immense pleasure in welcoming you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have compiled a few questions from our audience. Sir will be answering the questions as I ask, and in the meantime, audience can leave their questions in the chat box, which will be answered by sir at the end. Are we good to proceed with this, sir?
Please go ahead, doctor.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. So, being a successful surgeon, how did you develop interest in insurance sector? How difficult was the transition process?
Fine. As you were introducing me, I had my basic graduation and post-graduation from India, and I also had opportunity to work in overseas. So we are able to practice what we have read in overseas because money is not at all a constraint. So when I look at a patient, arrive at a diagnosis, I can opt for the best of the treatment after discussing with the patient and family. And money was never a constraint because back in 2000, the countries I worked, almost 95% of the people are covered by some financial system. Either there is a health insurance or the government pays them. When I returned back to India, and when I started my surgical practice, I found it very difficult to execute what I wanted because money is a big stumbling block. When I make a diagnosis and discuss the treatment options, I found that most of the patients, they were trying to choose the option that has the least cost effect. And even for that option, they need some money, time to borrow or sell their assets. Those instances where I have seen made me feel that apart from your knowledge, your clinical acumen to make a diagnosis and treat a patient, of greater importance is your outlook on the financial capabilities of a patient. And unfortunately, this is something our medical colleges fail to teach us. And we have to see the patient as a whole. It is not just physical health, mental health, social health, physiological health, and also the financial health. So it is the duty of every doctor to look at the patient as a whole. I have seen patients not being fortunate enough to have this outlook by the treating doctor, they may have a diagnosis A. Maybe I can say that CA cancer, cancer of breast, very commonly. The line of management, whether it is preemptive chemotherapy followed by surgery, plus or minus axillary dissection, followed by radiotherapy or post-operative chemotherapy, hormone receptor status, and then treatment. If everything is told to the patient upfront during the diagnosis, and if their mind is cautioned to spend so much of amount, then it is easy for the patient. But what happens today? Patient runs pillar to post, and after diagnosis with all the enthusiasm, they go to the first treating surgeon, maybe the surgeon who wants to do a breast conservation or whatever it is, and they spend whatever money they have on the first step. After that, they come to know that there is a second step, third step, fourth step, and unfortunately, they don't have money. They have utilized all their wealth. At least CA breast is a diagnosis which is very evident people can make. There are a lot of complex presentations. By the time the patient arrives at a diagnosis, he visits 2-3 doctors, undergoes a set of investigation, and whatever 1 lakh, 1.5 lakhs that he has, he spends. I'm talking about a diagnosis of any endocrinological problem or an autoimmune disease. Not all conditions present in the way we read in our textbooks. So it is very unfortunate that in India, by the time a patient reaches a diagnosis, they almost spend the wealth that they have with them. And when they start a treatment, they are not aware of the overall expenses. Only if they are aware of it, they can go to a comprehensive center which can care for them end to end. Otherwise, what happens? Halfway through, they abort their treatment. And unfortunately, they suffer on a longer morbidity. And when they suffer a longer morbidity, the overall cost spent will be much more than a planned approach. So what I'm trying to say, a surgeon or a physician or an interventionalist should not confine himself to his specialty or his desk. The most intelligent person on earth, I consider today, are doctors. So we belong to that breed. So we have to look beyond the books, outside the institutions, more than your specialty, on how you can extend your knowledge, your wisdom, and your acumen for the care of people. How you can make people to do something which they have not been doing all these days. Or in short, how you can practice something which you have not been taught in your college days. This is a comprehensive, holistic outlook on a patient, which not only includes physical and mental health, but also financial health.
Thank you, sir. Excellent, sir. Very inspiring. Being a giant in healthcare industry, you have a vast experience in health sector. But what did COVID teach you newly, sir? Well, how was it challenging for you?
The COVID, there are a lot of lessons. Initially, we were not that prepared. But over a period of 18 months, we never thought COVID will continue for 18 months today. And having seen this disease for 18 months, do we have the perfect resilience and resolve? This is very important. This 18 months, whatever you are trying to ask me, what is that I have learned? What I have learned is the country needs people to equip themselves with the proper resilience and resolve to fight against this pandemic. So there are a lot of things between COVID-1 and COVID-2. We always see that, between the first wave and the second wave, if most of us would have witnessed, first wave, everything was very clear. We were worried about the number of ventilators or beds and hospital infrastructure space, but we had enough space. And there was no want of infrastructure or expertise. Although doctors have to do their duties and paramedics have to stay close to the hospital, and the hospital have to do some negative pressure settings to keep the their environment infection free. Most of the hospitals went into convert their setup into a COVID-19 center. lot of good things were happening, but at the end of the day, we were able to manage the volume, but we didn't have clear guidelines. In the first wave, there were no clear guidelines. The cocktail treatment using steroid, anticoagulant, and prone position, oxygen, all these things we came to know only after 2-3 months. In the meantime, there were a lot of people who had fever for 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. Between 8th to 11th day, they deteriorated and they died. And we never knew that in this condition, people are going to deteriorate during that period. We always think that 1 week, okay, usually the fever is going to settle. But actually, patients deteriorated after 7 days. This is the first 2 months when most of the government hospitals were caring for COVID patients. Then private hospital went into their help. And now today, the first wave, the transmission is not very high, but second wave, it was the mutant strain was rapidly transmitting, affecting a lot of people within a short span. Whatever we as a health insurance company saw in 1 year, around 70% of the volume we saw in just 45 days. So that was a volume of cases that we saw during the second wave. And first wave affected old people, people who are above 60 years, or people with comorbidity. But second wave affected young people, maybe obese, but young people, and people who are pregnant. First wave affected people only in the metros, whereas second wave involved people in the rural areas. First wave, we never had problems of people waiting outside the hospital and dying for oxygen. And in first wave, the sequelae are not so many as we see in second wave. In second wave, we saw this post-COVID pneumonitis, fibrosis, and patient requiring prolonged NIV support, ventilatory support, oxygen support. And there were instances where we from Star Health Insurance, we have seen patients staying in the hospital for 2 months, 2.5 months, coming with a bill of 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs. But some of them luckily had some insured of up to 1 crore. If people do not have insurance, imagine, it wouldn't have come to our knowledge at all, or probably they wouldn't have continued their treatment. So between the first wave and second wave, there were a lot of learnings. But what is more important is the clinical community and the scientific community should align. The standard procedures followed in all hospitals should be as per the ICMR or All India Institute of Medical Science, AIMS guidelines. So if all hospitals start following the guidelines, and if you don't abuse drugs, if you don't expose patients to unnecessary CT scan, the number of CT scans done in India would have been the maximum globally. None of the developed countries would have done so many CT scans. Any patient tested RTR positive, the next hour he is in the CT room, which is not required. It is going to mislead. When the clinical parameters have to be monitored every day, a patient who is otherwise young and no comorbidity, RT-PCR positive, what is the need for a CT scan? And when his saturation is good, when he has very mild or moderate fever, and the duration is less than 5 days, what is that it is going to add value? Any investigation is something, most of the youngsters here, please note that, what we learned in overseas. We cannot ask for a CT scan just like that. Unless there is a desaturation, or clinically when we find it is indicated, or X-ray shows multiple peripheral opacities. And based on the X-ray, if you think you need to study in depth, then you can go for a CT scan. But in India, CT scan alone, there are a lot of things on drugs, on convalescent plasma, on remdesivir, I can talk volumes. But you will take only CT scan. Close your eyes and see how many CT scans were done during this second wave. And definitely majority of them are not required. And it was only misleading the people, because the 60-day patient may get unwell, but second day he would have done a CT scan, and CT scan would have been normal. And when he gets unwell, he will imagine that his CT scan is normal based on the scan done on the second day, which is not indicated. But 60 days, when his oxygen is dropping, that is the time we need to do a CT scan. So, meaning that, why I'm talking about CT scan, because all over the country, we didn't have a uniform protocol. We never knew that when to ask for a CT scan. And people were trying to dictate treatment to the doctors. So why can't I just get a CT scan done just to know what it is? What is he going to do? No investigation should be ordered unless the physician knows that it is not going to influence his treatment. If any treatment, if the investigation is going to change my outlook and influence my ideas, only then I should ask for the treatment. I just cannot ask for the treatment just because patient wants to get a CT scan done. My dear friends, please note that it exposes to a lot of radiation. Your own AIMS director, Guleria, has clearly said, because most of the places in India, they don't use state-of-the-art machines. They're using refabricated older CT scan machines, which will expose the patient to a greater radiation. So these are all very important. So the COVID-19 teaches us that when there is a pandemic, we have to work together, clinical community and scientific community, to stay in alignment, and we should follow uniform guidelines. We should maintain data, and we should believe that a bed or an infrastructure in this country, be it available in the hospital, government hospital or private hospital, it belongs to the country, because private and government should come in alignment. Only then we can save this country, particularly when there is a pandemic. We saw that if government and private have to work in isolation, we cannot save our people. So naturally, the infrastructure and expertise available, whether in government or in private, it is a property of the country. That is a lesson we have learned from this pandemic. The policymakers should also know that, and they should give the necessary allowances for the hospitals, subsidies for the hospitals, so that hospitals will not be considered as a commercial entity. So you have to give the proper guidelines and guide the doctors practicing the hospitals. At the same time, the government should also take care of some subsidy. They should not consider the hospital as a showroom like any TV or a air conditioning showroom. You can visit. We are not doing a commercial service. We are doing a human service. So there should be some subsidy given to hospitals so that they are able to practice at a reasonable cost.
Yes. Very well explained, sir, and also you beautifully summarized at the end also. Thank you, sir. So moving on to the next question. How much growth has the health insurance sector seen in the recent pandemic?
See, every pandemic in any country, it will accelerate the growth. Insurance during the SARS-CoV-1 in 2002-3 during Singapore, in many parts of the globe, we have seen whenever there is a pandemic, people will have awareness on insurance and it will accelerate the growth. This happened in India. Most of the people had awareness for buying health insurance. So they went in and there was good sales happening. But one step more than that, a lot of people utilize the services. And there was also extremely high outgo of claims that happened. So insurance companies were doing more business at one end and they were spending one step more than what they earned. And last year, if you see, almost all the health insurance companies, they had a loss in their books because they have to spend more money than what they have been earning from the market. So this is a situation where there was growth, but parallelly or superseding the growth, there was outgo also.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next question. Sir, in your observation, how disastrous is a sudden death of a family member, especially in financial aspects?
It's a very, very pathetic thing. In India, particularly when we practice in overseas or when we continue our practice in India, what I have personally witnessed, poverty and disease is a very dangerous combination. Poverty and disease, it's a very dangerous proportion. And usually the people who know that they are suffering from the disease and who are conscious that they can be all right if they have money, but who are dying because they don't have that muscle power to spend. So this is that is the reason why I always think that of all inequalities in healthcare is most inhuman. As youngsters, you people should come with a policy, because we cannot wait for the government to do or the medical council to do or the ministry to take care. We have to see what we can contribute. In India, if we start blaming, one more media talking, commenting and criticizing about others, we don't have any visibility for what we are talking. We want to be sensible and we want to be part of the good change that can happen in this country, that is required for this country. So there is a growth. Parallelly, there was also outgo to health insurance in this scenario is passing through a very, very critical phase.
Okay, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. So, and what do you think is the people's mindset towards health insurance before pandemic and during pandemic? How has the mindset changed towards people towards health insurance?
I've heard a lot of people saying that, sir, the patient, I got admitted. Luckily, 50th day, we got all right. We came back. Immediately after coming home, I called the agent and then I booked my policy. There are a lot of people who say that they have understood the importance of insurance, particularly when they hear their friends or their dear ones getting admitted for a long time. At one end, they have recovered, but other end, they have to pay a bill of 8 to 10 lakhs. It's a huge amount. They cannot bear that. So all these things makes the family, friends, and all the people associated with the patient to go and get an health insurance policy. So definitely, it has triggered that awareness, but still there should be some form of structured financial support for health, particularly people of the lower socioeconomic class. So economically underprivileged segment in India still requires some financial support. Otherwise, the breadwinner of the family, leave alone this pandemic, if they are diagnosed with a heart disease or a cancer, they don't have money to take care of their health. And what happens to the breadwinner if he's not able to take care of his health? Who is going to save the family? So this is a very critical state. So naturally, there should be some structured financial mechanism to help these people, because all these people cannot go to government hospitals, because we see in government hospitals, the demand is more and the supply is not matching. At the same time, if these people have to go to a private hospital, the cost is prohibitive. They cannot bear the cost. What can a person from economically underprivileged segment can do? When he goes to the government hospital, there's a huge waiting list. But this is a person diagnosed with a single vessel disease and he needs a stent, or a patient diagnosed with a cancer and he is waiting for a surgery. And if he wants to go to a private hospital, the cost is prohibitive. He cannot meet. What can he do? There are a lot of people dying just because they don't get a financial capacity to pay for a dialysis, leave alone heart attack or cancer. I'm talking about a regular dialysis for a month. If they require 12 sittings in a month, that's going to cost close to 15,000-20,000. They don't have that. So in India, the inequality in healthcare has to be addressed. And every growing entrepreneur, every doctor in the making, every medical college should teach the doctors some financial sense. This is very, very important. Without knowing that, whatever knowledge you have, what are you going to do? When you start your practice, you are going to see majority of the patients who are going to count their money when it comes to healthcare expenses. So you have to give them the option which is cost effective. And you have to look out for some model where we can treat majority of patients in India at a very reasonable cost. So this is a message I want to give to the youngsters here. Please look things also at the financial angle, particularly postgraduates. You are already a doctor. So all the more, whether it is available in your syllabus or not, you all should develop that outlook, which is going to help you in a big way.
Very well explained, sir. And you are talking about those who are economically underprivileged. But being an employee of an IT company or being a doctor, I earn for myself. I save it in the bank and I will use it for paying the hospital bills if I fall sick. Why should I buy health insurance and why should I spend on it from now on? Asking in simple terms, what is the concept of health insurance?
Why should I buy if I am able to earn 50,000 or 1 lakh per month? So out of the 50,000 or 1 lakh I earn, from what I spend, I'm going to save small amount. And when out of 1 lakh I earn in a metro, if I have the provision to save even 40,000 rupees and spend 60,000, and this 40,000 over a period of 1 year, I would have saved 5 lakhs. And one health ailment will wipe away all my savings for 1 year. And how many people can save 40,000 a month in India? What if they are able to save only 10,000? It may take 4 years for them to save this 5 lakhs, and all their hard-earned savings will be wiped away by one accident or one health incident. So naturally, you cannot think that I will use my money. Insurance is the whole concept, as you ask me, it is a pooling of fund. Many people pay so that whoever is deserving can utilize this fund. If 100 people pay, 10 people may utilize the fund. So those who are paying should not think that they have wasted their money. What they have paid is utilized for someone who is in need. If they are continuously paying every year for 5 years and nothing happens to them, they have to thank God. Because insurance is a noble concept where they collect many from many and pay for few. And this is a very noble service. It's at the core, it is divine. So every one of youngsters in India should come forward and take a health insurance policy when they are normal. And the money you are spending is much less compared to what people are paying in overseas. And whatever you are paying, if you are not utilizing, it is reaching someone who is in need. So that is a noble concept of insurance.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the clear explanation. That my next few questions are also answered by you already within this. So, but as a citizen of India, as a person from Tamil Nadu, I already have my health being taken care by the government. I have health insurance provided by the state and central governments. And if I'm working somewhere, I will be given ESI also. In such case, why should I pay a private player?
Fine. That's a very nice question, interesting question. See, health insurance, everyone should have some health insurance cover. And most important is adequate health insurance cover. Somebody may have an health insurance cover for 2 lakhs or 1 lakh. And you know, COVID, the bills can come to 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs. So it is not adequate. So the health insurance cover should include all the family members. If there is a husband, wife, and children, all of them should be covered under one policy, which is a floater policy. So any one of them can utilize if there is a need. So it is not the insurance policy that is available. It should be adequate health insurance cover. You have to ascertain whether you have adequate health insurance cover. So this is very important. Number one. Number two, you are asking about some other schemes. You have to see if your dear ones are covered by some scheme, whatever you told. You have to see whether these are well implemented schemes. And for these schemes, is there treatment available in hospitals of good profile? So if the scheme is well implemented, and if the scheme allows treatment in hospitals of good profile, then probably you can go for it. Otherwise, you have to ask yourself, am I covered by a proper insurance scheme which will really help me? And do I have an adequate health insurance? These two things are very important.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So, and as you said earlier, doctors, right from even postgraduates, should be knowing about these financial management and health insurance. What exactly is our role in knowing this and how it is going to reflect on patient care? Can you please elaborate on this a bit more, sir?
See,
Why is it essential?
halfway through treatment gets aborted. If there is no use, there are a lot of patients who say that, sir, beyond this I cannot spend, transfer me to a government hospital. And nobody wants the patient. One cannot be treated by someone when there is money, and without money they cannot go to another setup. Nobody will own the patient. So that is why, as I started, I said that there should be a comprehensive outlook, and the patient has the right to know what is the end-to-end cost of the treatment, so that they can plan their financial, it is the physical health and financial health. So yeah, there should be a life term and a life plan. So there, naturally, my advice is, when you talk to patients, please tell them that when they are diagnosed with a major ailment, understand the end-to-end treatment cost before you decide. Otherwise, they need not succumb to the hands of a commercial center, where they will utilize all their money available for the first or second level of treatment, and for the subsequent levels of treatment, they will not have money, and this will result in recurrence of the disease, or extended morbidity. These are all preventable. So definitely, financial sense is most important for the diagnosing doctor, treating doctor, and to the patient. And when you tell that, end of the day, when the patient gets all right, he will say, how brilliantly my treatment took a course of 6 to 9 months. But the first day when the doctor saw me, he could be able to see, give an overview of what is required for the 9 months and what will be the appropriate cost. So I could plan my treatment. So please, the end of the day, after your treatment, we were trained in a day where patients used to worship doctors because the way they conduct themselves and they care for the patients. Today, patients should not look at doctors as just service providers. We are not doing any commodity service. We are in human service. So naturally, the way we conduct ourselves, even in these tough times, should build the trust and confidence of the public on the medical fraternity. And this culture you have to imbibe from your young days.
Thank you, sir. Very well answered. But as we all know, there are so many companies offering health insurance. So which one should I buy? Which plan should I choose? There's a wide range of varieties available. Which is the best fit for me?
So you can choose any insurance company based on the type of product they are trying to give you and the presence of the company. How strong is the company? Is it present all over the country? Are they able to give a good services? Have they network with maximum number of hospitals? Can you avail cashless facility anywhere you go using this insurance policy? And does this insurance company have a standing and service efficiency? This we have to check. But one thing I can tell you, in India, all insurance companies, there are 32 plus health insurance companies. All these companies are under the strict regulation of IRDAI, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, because they are handling public fund. So every insurance company, what type of insurance policies they have to design, how much they have to charge, and how to service, how to network the hospital, and how to take care of their customers or policy holders. All these things should happen as per the rules framed by the regulator. It is not like healthcare services, hospital, anyone can start a hospital. Just a license, the formalities are very less. And anyone can include any specialty. Whereas health insurance is not like that. It is a highly regulated sector. So you can believe any company which offers health insurance policy. Only thing is, you should do the homework of how strong is the company and how good they are in their services.
Thank you, sir. So one common doubt which people ask is that what is the difference between life insurance and health insurance? Can you please elaborate on that, sir?
See, life insurance is more a like term insurance or unit link policies or a benefit policy. Like somebody pays every year, and like if they die, they may get a benefit. The family or the nominees may get a benefit. Or if they live beyond that period, 15 years, 20 years, whatever they pay, after that they can get some money back. Whereas health insurance is not like that. These are all indemnity policies. In health insurance, it is every year you pay. The policy, the contract is only for 1 year. And whatever policy you have, it will pay up to the expenses you have incurred. Life insurance will pay a lump sum, whereas health insurance will pay up to the expenses that has been incurred following any diagnosis. And life insurance, it's when you enter into a life insurance contract, it is for 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, different policies. Whereas health insurance every year, 1 year, what you pay. Next year you can decide whether you want to continue, for the same sum insured or increase the sum insured, something like that. So the two, all of them are under the same regulator, but these are two different companies with different life licenses. A life company cannot do this health, and the health company cannot do the life. They're all different companies with different licenses, but all of them work under the ambit and the governance of the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So, and apart from health insurance, why do you think knowledge about financial management is important for doctors, and how and what are the instruments which doctors can invest in?
See, you're not see. For up to 30 years, you are spending your time pursuing your knowledge. So from 30 to 40, you have to follow some senior colleagues and learn the basics and fundamental principles of practicing medicine. After 40 years only, a doctor from a middle class family in India starts seeing wealth. By the time they start seeing wealth, they are in their 40s or mid 40s. And when they become popular during 50s, some of them who become popular, they can make enough wealth. But a sense of a financial planning on how you are going to utilize your knowledge and resources to earn money, how you are able to multiply your wealth, all these sense should be a doctor should be exposed to all these things. Otherwise, all his knowledge to learn, to study, to master his art, and only work on hospitals or something. There are a lot of people who are very intelligent, but they know only their home and their hospital and practice. And they are poor managers of their wealth. So naturally, with the amount of knowledge that any doctor has to do his specialty or super specialty, definitely if he spends some 5% of his time on knowing about the financial news, what is happening in the global economy, Indian economy, what is happening to a current GDP. The less than 1% of the GDP spent on health is resulting in more than 36% to spend on for the current epidemic during this pandemic. So we have not built a strong primary healthcare model. So what is deficient in our healthcare services? So how I can bridge the gap or make money to do an investment which can help my fellow citizens as well as to grow the healthcare status of our country. So if you have some financial wisdom, and when this combines with your medical knowledge, you can think of the healthcare requirement much better than a policy maker who has no medical knowledge. So naturally, people with medical knowledge, a small segment of them should carve a path and gain financial wisdom and become future policy makers in healthcare area. In the healthcare arena, what we need is people with medical background and some administrative knowledge and financial sense. This is very important. ideally insurance as a subject has to be included in the medical curriculum, because in India, health insurance is growing very fast. Like in the Western world, tomorrow, most of the hospitals and most of the patients you treat are going to be covered under health insurance. And health insurance companies are going to govern the practices and patient safety goal norms in the hospitals. Health insurance companies are going to lay the guidelines for practices in the hospitals. If that is going to be the future, and if a practicing doctor is not aware of insurance and its noble objectives, then he is losing a lot. So as postgraduates, you all should, it's very good initiative, Dr. Venkatesh, that you have taken this subject, because this is something which is not available in your textbook and where your college is not teaching you. So naturally, this is very important topic, and this is just a beginning. Every one of you should spend time to know about what is happening in this industry, so that when the right opportunity comes, these knowledges can help in a bigger transformation and metamorphosis happening in your life. When the right opportunity comes, the knowledge that you are gaining these days by attending a webinar like this, definitely I can tell you, this can create a great metamorphosis. That day you can think about Prakash. Please give importance to such webinars, which is conducted, like, I should really appreciate the IMA junior wing under Dr. Venkatesh, who has taken this initiative. These are very important and pertinent topics. Keep listening to this again and again and spend your time. You have the potential. You have the knowledge and wisdom. You are already a successful person. You are a doctor. You are the most qualified person, highly qualified person in this country. If you cannot do, no one can do. It is not your job just to complete your degree and make wealth only for you. Your knowledge and your wisdom should help in creating greater transformation in this country, transformation in the healthcare ecosystem in this country. It is possible, it is going to happen, and the people who are attending this forum, I'm very confident most of them have the potential to get into this transformation, and I'm really excited that your people could be able to think about this topic for a discussion in a webinar like this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words, sir. So, and as someone who is very much motivated by what you have told for the past few minutes, I'm more interested to learn about financial management right now. But what are the resources available? Where can I find? Where can I read about this? Can you please throw a light on this, sir?
This is a very interesting question. The resources should be made available. Currently in India, it is not available to the medical students. It should be made available. So there are certain areas. As I work in India and overseas, when I come back to India, what I understand, ethics, medical ethics, there should be greater in-depth time spent on ethics with illustrations and examples. And this culture has to be imbibed in the minds of young doctors. Empathy towards patient. We are in India, we are always in the mood of seeing hundreds and thousands of patients in a day. So we don't have time to hear them and pass on our caring. The empathy is very important, and etiquette. So ethics, empathy, etiquette, financial wisdom, all these things are not taught in medical colleges these days. My dear friends, you have to learn it out of your own personal interest. And days are not far when these things will be included in the medical curriculum. And maybe tomorrow, you should be the champions to fight against creating this change, so that all these what we are discussing should find a part in medical curriculum, academic curriculum in future.
Thank you so much, sir. Like as you said earlier, we don't have any proper single resource where we can get all this knowledge, and the enlightenment which you have given in the past 1 hour. I think if a normal person wants to get this out of reading in internet, it would take at least a few days at a stretch. Thank you so much, sir. It's a wonderful session. And we can take questions from the audience. You can start typing in the chat box. We'll take few questions due to time constraint. And before that, in the meanwhile, while you're typing the questions, we have a special guest with us here. She's a person who played a key role in managing our Tamil Nadu IMA JDN free COVID helpline and has spent several hours together for past couple of weeks purely with the intention to serve the needy people. Being an MBBS student, she did not restrict herself to academics, but has come forward to help those who suffer. She is also serving the patients in a charitable clinic under Sai Baba's Trust from the age of 10. And to highlight, she's the daughter of our speaker, Dr. Prakash sir, and also my UG College junior. Now, I welcome Dr. Bailey Prakash to share her experiences of working in COVID helpline.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the introduction. So ever since I was a kid, I was consistently fed with the urge to do justice to my potential by making a difference in the lives of others. But lately, because of such a strong second wave of COVID, I was feeling really helpless. And at that time, pre-final and final year students were not even given the permission to treat via teleconsultation. And that is when Dr. Venkatesh came up with a brilliant initiative to start our own teleconsultation service with the doctors of IMA. And that is where I got the opportunity to bridge the gap between the consultants and the patients. We circulated the number on social media, and I had to communicate to a lot of anxious and jittery patients, but we did so with a lot of reassurance. And at every point where the mild patients needed the specialist consultation, we sent them to get appropriate help from the hospital. And to our surprise, even after consulting their specialist and even after getting discharged, they still remained in touch with us. And this boosted our confidence to a whole new level. So far, we have treated close to 300 patients, and many of them were grateful and relieved. And in fact, when they shared their love and emotions and when they gave us their positive feedback, it really enhanced the humanity in us. And it made me feel like I, as a student, was able to do something, at least a small part, in making a difference in people's lives. So the synergy of the inherent potential in all of us under the support of a platform like IMA can help us to create great reforms. In a context where unfortunately doctors are manhandled, we should continue to serve the community and be confident in what we know and what we are. We should conduct ourselves in a really bold manner and tell the people that we work on evidence-based medicine and protocol-based approach. So please join us in working together towards this objective of building the trust, enhancing our knowledge, fostering the ecosystem, and helping the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey. It's very inspiring. And I hope this will be a motivation for all the students who are watching this. So thank you so much. I once again thank Dr. Prakash sir for taking his time amidst his extremely busy schedule. I also thank Bailey, IMA Junior Doctors Network, and all our wonderful participants who made this webinar a great success. Hope the knowledge gained out of this webinar will be beneficial for all of us. Thank you so much, everyone. We are closing now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.